I'm Anna Hawthorne, and that Thanksgiving, my only daughter, Lisa, stared at me like I was a smudge on her perfect world. Her husband's family, all decked out in fancy silk and smug grins, didn't even try to hide their scorn. To them, I was nothing but a leech, a dead weight, something they wished they could have scraped off years ago. The worst came when a pricey porcelain vase, supposedly worth over $8,000, smashed to bits. But what's $8,000 compared to the years my husband and I poured everything into raising her? What's a vase next to the nights we skipped meals so she could have food, or the winters we shivered so she could stay cozy? None of it mattered. That same night, Lisa kicked me out into the freezing cold. No warning, no second thoughts. One broken vase was enough to wipe away a lifetime of love. I sat on the curb, hands shaking, tears streaming, not from the cold, but from the crack splitting my heart in two. That night, I thought I'd lost it all. But now? The tears are dry. The hurt has turned to steel. And it's time they learned something from me. Before I dive into this painful chapter of my life, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Your support keeps me going, sharing these heartfelt family stories every day. Fall has always been my favorite, with leaves rustling softly as they drift down, painting clear view streets in warm golds and reds. At 61, a widow living solo in our little Ohio town, I clung to these small joys more than ever. But that Thanksgiving morning in 2022 felt unique. A mix of excitement and nervous jitters danced in my chest. On a whim, driven by how much I missed her, I decided to surprise my daughter, Lisa, at her fancy New York home. It had been ages since we'd shared a holiday. Way too long. I packed my battered old suitcase, running my fingers over its worn leather, reassuring myself this was a great plan. For weeks, I'd pictured Lisa's face lighting up with shock and joy, her voice bubbly as she'd say, "Mom, you're here," and pull me into her home, eager to show me off to her husband's family. The thought warmed my heart. Maybe, just maybe, this could bridge the gap that had grown between us. The trip was long and lonesome. As the Greyhound bus chugged toward New York City, my excitement started fading into worry. What if Lisa wasn't thrilled about this surprise? Doubts I'd pushed aside came flooding in, stirring a heavy unease in my gut. The sky outside turned gloomier, clouds thickening, matching the anxiety creeping over me. Still, I told myself family was everything, and surely Lisa would be happy to see me. When I finally stepped into her posh neighborhood, I stopped short, catching my breath. The streets were wide and spotless, lined with grand mansions that felt cold and daunting. Lisa's house loomed large, its fancy gates shut tight, like they were keeping folks like me out. In my plain wool coat and faded dress, I felt out of place, but I squared my shoulders, remembering my mama's words, "Dignity doesn't come from money." Crunch of gravel under my worn shoes filled the quiet as I walked up the long driveway. Through glowing windows, I spotted Lisa setting a beautiful Thanksgiving table, and my heart raced with nervous hope. It'd be so wonderful to share that warmth, to feel close again. I took a deep breath and tapped lightly on the glossy door, my pulse hammering. A tall, sharply dressed young woman opened it, her eyes scanning my simple clothes before flashing with a hint of annoyance. She stepped back, waving vaguely toward the dining room. "Lisa," she called over her shoulder, irritation in her tone, "someone's here for you." When Lisa appeared, her eyes widened, not with happiness, but with shock and something like dread. Her cheeks flushed a deep, embarrassed red. "Mom," she stumbled, voice sharp and icy. Why are you here?" My heart plummeted, shame washing over me like a wave. I felt tiny, wishing I could disappear. I managed a shaky smile. "Surprise, sweetheart. I figured I'd come share Thanksgiving with you." Lisa paused, glancing anxiously toward the dining room, then back at me, lips pressed thin. "You should have called, Mom," she hissed, clearly upset, mortified by my unannounced visit. "This isn't a good time." Beyond her, curious stares peeked from the fancy dining room. I saw Robert, Lisa's husband, sitting tall at a stunning, polished table, surrounded by his rich, elegant family visiting for the night. Every eye turned my way, judging me with barely hidden contempt. Their silent scorn pressed hard against my chest. Lisa stood there, visibly torn. "Everyone," she finally said, her voice tight and forced, "this is my mom, Anna." A heavy silence blanketed the room, thick and suffocating. I tried a polite, hopeful smile, but the coldness I got back stung my heart. Not one person spoke to greet me. The only sound was the faint tick of a fancy clock on the wall. Then a child's voice, innocent but piercing, cut through, "Mommy, who's that poor lady?" Laughter burst around the table, harsh and cutting, slicing deep into my pride. Lisa's face twisted with embarrassment, her eyes avoiding mine. Humiliation burned my cheeks, tears pricking, but I swallowed hard, refusing to cry. Was this really how my daughter saw me? Just a shameful blot on her perfect life? Robert cleared his throat, a faint smirk in his eyes. "Lisa, maybe your mom could at least join us for dinner. It's Thanksgiving, after all," he said, his tone polite but dripping with condescension, like he was offering me charity, not kindness. Lisa nodded stiffly, pointing to an empty chair at the far end of the gleaming table. "Sit, Mom," she mumbled, eyes down, dodging mine. The meal dragged on, awkward and tense, with shallow chatter that danced around me like I wasn't there. I poked at the lavish food, each bite sour with shame. Every glance my way felt like a quiet jab, mocking my clothes, my manners, my very place in their flawless world. Once dinner wrapped up, the guests cleared out fast, leaving a thick cloud of tension hanging over the house. Robert slipped off to his study without so much as a glance my way, leaving just me and Lisa in that big, chilly living room. She stood by the fireplace, her posture stiff, like she was holding back a storm of anger and shame. After what felt like forever, she finally spoke, her voice sharp and weary. "Mom, you can crash here tonight. There's a spare room upstairs," she said, her words clipped and cold. "We'll sort things out tomorrow." I gave a quiet nod, but her offer felt empty, like a grudging obligation. My throat ached, fighting to keep my emotions from spilling over. Lisa left the room without another word, and there I was, alone in all that fancy decor, feeling more hollow and broken than I ever had. Sitting in the quiet, watching the fire's dying glow, a brutal truth hit me hard. My own daughter was embarrassed of me, of who I am, of the life I came from. I'd dreamed of this visit being full of love, reconciliation, and warmth. Instead, it slapped me with a reality as jagged as shattered glass. Loneliness sank deeper as I dragged myself up the stairs to the guest room, pristine but cold as ice. Everything was in perfect order, yet it lacked any shred of comfort. Lying in the dark, I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They started silent, then turned to soft sobs of grief and letdown. But beneath that pain, something tougher took root, a strength forged from years of quiet endurance, lonely nights, and sacrifices I'd never regretted. Lisa had made her choice, but I had one too. I wasn't about to beg or let shame chain me down. Despite the plush guest room and soft bed Lisa offered, sleep wouldn't come. I lay there in the dark, heart heavy, my mind wandering back to the past. Memories rushed in, vivid and unrelenting. Clearview, my little Ohio hometown, was simple and unassuming, a place where I'd spent most of my life. I could still picture our modest house, tucked among endless cornfields, its worn roof fading to gray, always smelling of warm bread I baked each morning. Henry, my late husband, was a kind soul, working himself to the bone with any job he could find to keep us afloat. Money was tight, but happiness filled our home back then. Lisa, our only girl, grew up in that humble world. I can still see Henry, hands shaking from cold, patching our drafty windows in winter to keep her warm. We scraped by, but we made sure Lisa never felt wanting. I'd stay up late, stitching my old dresses into pretty outfits so she could go to friends' birthday parties without feeling less. I never minded our struggles, believing every sacrifice was worth it if Lisa grew up joyful and confident. But Lisa was different. Even as a kid, she seemed uneasy about our simple life, careful not to share too much about us with her friends. I thought it was just a phase she'd outgrow, but as she grew up, that shame only deepened. When Lisa landed a full scholarship to a top university in 2000, my heart swelled with pride. I still remember standing at the bus station, tears in my eyes, waving her off, gently reminding her to hold on to her roots. Looking back, that might have been the last time I saw warmth in her gaze toward me. Things shifted when she met Robert Clark, a man whose wealth and status were worlds apart from ours. Robert, 45 now, came from a high-society New York family. From the moment we met, I sensed his aloofness, hidden behind polished manners. I'll never forget how he looked at our little Clearview house that first visit. His eyes screamed disgust, like he'd stepped in something filthy. Over time, Lisa started echoing his ways. She stopped talking about her family, and her rare trips home grew more strained. When Lisa had her son in 2015, my grandson I barely know, her place in Robert's family got a bit stronger. In my hopeful heart, I thought maybe this would give her the confidence to embrace her roots, to reconnect with me. I was so wrong. When the first faint light of morning crept through the guest room windows, I realized I'd been awake all night, lost in those memories. The soft glow did nothing to lift the heaviness in my chest. As I waited for Lisa to come downstairs, I made up my mind to ask her about staying longer. Since Henry passed in 2019, loneliness had been eating me alive. Despite the sting of last night, I clung to a thin hope that Lisa might understand and let me stay, even just for a little while. That morning, sitting in her sleek, modern kitchen, watching Lisa silently fix breakfast, I hesitated before finding my voice. "Lisa, there's something I need to talk about," I said softly. She stopped, turning to me with a tired, uneasy look. "I know I'm probably butting into your life here," I went on, my heart tightening at the distance in her eyes. "But I miss you so much. Since your dad's been gone, the loneliness has been crushing. I was hoping you'd let me stick around for a bit, if it's not too much trouble." Lisa went still, her face flashing with worry and irritation. After a long, awkward pause, she finally answered, her voice flat and guarded. "I'd need to check with Robert first. Things here are complicated, Mom." Her words said more than she meant them to. Still, she hadn't flat out said no. After a hushed conversation with her husband behind closed doors, Lisa grudgingly gave in to my plea. Right away, I could tell her heart wasn't in it. It was more about keeping up appearances, worried about the gossip that might swirl if folks found out someone as rich and prominent as Lisa turned her own mother away. Robert, always obsessed with his reputation for kindness, didn't outright protest. But life in their house turned tense fast. I could feel Lisa's unease every time her eyes flicked toward me. She went out of her way to keep me out of sight from her friends and neighbors. When company came over, she'd quietly ask me to stay upstairs, tucked away like a secret. Robert barely hid his disdain, treating me like a weight he'd rather toss aside, even though he kept up a polite front. To them, I was just an unwanted duty, someone they had to put up with, not someone they cared for. Those days were heavy with silent pain. Lisa's shame about having me in her perfectly polished world stung deeply, leaving a hurt that wouldn't fade. Still, I pushed down my pride and carried on quietly, clinging to the hope that one day my daughter might see the love and all the sacrifices I'd made for her, the unwavering care I'd shown through our toughest moments. Maybe then, I thought to myself, we could close the painful distance that had grown between us. The days blended into a dull, numbing routine. Even though I lived under Lisa's roof, I felt more like a servant than a mother. Lisa and Robert never said it outright, but their expectations were clear. I wasn't supposed to sit idle, so I made myself useful. I scrubbed floors, washed dishes, straightened up their already spotless house, and cooked meals, usually without a single thank you. The work didn't bother me, I'd worked hard my whole life, but being invisible did. They didn't care for me, they just barely tolerated me. Still, I told myself I was grateful to be near Lisa, to have some kind of place in her life, even if it felt nameless. Every morning, I'd rise before dawn and move through the house like a ghost, careful not to draw attention or take up too much space. The silence in that house settled into my bones, lonely and cold. I'd think back to days in Clearview, when Henry and I would sit on our porch with coffee, chuckling over nothing at all. Back then, even with empty pockets, life felt full, loud, rich, warm. In Lisa's house, everything shone, but it all felt lifeless. It was a Thursday afternoon in December 2022 when disaster struck. I was mopping the grand hallway, humming softly, when my bad knee, the one that had been acting up for years, gave out. I lurched to the side, grabbing for anything to steady myself. My hand hit a flimsy little pedestal, and before I could blink, I heard it, the awful crash of porcelain smashing on marble. Time froze. I turned and saw the wreckage of Lisa's prized vase, a tall, pale blue antique she'd bragged was from 18th century France, now just sharp pieces strewn across the floor. My heart dropped. I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the mess like I'd just committed a crime. Heavy footsteps came pounding down the hall, and Robert appeared, his eyes zeroing in on the shattered vase. His face twisted from confusion to fury in a heartbeat. "What the hell did you do?" he snapped. I tried to explain, my voice shaky. "I slipped," I said. My knee buckled, and I lost my balance. I didn't mean, but he wasn't hearing it. He spun around, storming toward the kitchen, shouting, "Lisa!" She appeared moments later, her face already tight with worry. Robert didn't hold back. "I warned you this would happen," he hissed, his voice cutting through the house. "I told you not to let her stay. That vase was worth more than she's ever laid eyes on." His words hit like a slap, but Lisa's silence hurt worse. She wouldn't even look at me. Robert kept going, his voice quieter but still sharp. "I've dealt with this for weeks. She's a walking disaster, and I'm done with her ruining our home." Lisa flinched, and for a fleeting moment, I hoped she'd stand up for me. I searched her face for any sign of warmth, pity, love, anything, but all I saw was strain, anger, and something deeper, shame. "She's leaving," Lisa said, her voice cold and clipped. "Tonight." It felt like the ground had been yanked out from under me. I didn't fight back. What good would it have done? My own daughter, my blood, chose silence over kindness, embarrassment over care. Robert didn't say another word, he just stalked off down the hall. Lisa stayed, her jaw tight, still avoiding my eyes. "Pack your stuff, Mom," she said, flat as stone. "I'll get you a cab." Outside, snow was falling, light, slanting flakes catching the city lights, dusting the sidewalk with a cold, fleeting beauty. I sat on the curb, my small suitcase beside me, trying to hold myself together. My hands shook from the chill and the weight of everything I couldn't put into words. People hurried by, wrapped in coats and scarves, not one of them pausing. I must have looked just like Robert thought I was, a worn-out old woman, unimportant, a nuisance cast aside. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, a shiny black car pulled up. The passenger window rolled down, and a man leaned out, eyeing me through the snow with a slight frown. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his tone cautious. I looked up, my face hot with cold and shame, and managed a weak smile. "Just waiting," I murmured. He paused, then pulled out his wallet and held out a $5 bill. "Here," he said. "Get something warm to drink." The gesture, probably meant to be kind, cut through me like a blade. I stared at the money in his hand, my face burning, and something inside me shattered. "I'm not some street beggar," I said, my voice steadier than I thought it could be. "Please don't act like I am." There was a long pause. His eyes squinted, studying me closely. Then, slowly, recognition lit up his face. "Anna?" I blinked, thinking I'd heard wrong. "Anna Hawthorne," he said again, firmer this time. "Is that really you?" "Yeah," I whispered, barely audible. He climbed out of the car, no longer the sharp-dressed businessman, but just John. John Adams, the kid who sat next to me in literature class, shared his umbrella when it poured, and sent me a letter after graduation I never got around to answering. "My God, Anna, what are you doing out here in the cold like this?" he asked, his voice heavy with shock and something softer, like grief. I couldn't look at him, my eyes dropping to the snowy ground. It's a complicated mess, I mumbled. He went quiet for a second, then bent down and grabbed my suitcase without a word. Come on, he said, his tone gentle but firm. You're coming with me. No way I'm leaving you here. I don't need your charity, I said, my stubborn pride flaring through the shame. This isn't charity, he replied. It's just being human. Plus, I owe you one. The snow kept falling as I let him lead me to the car. I felt small and worn out, but somehow steadied by him being there. The car's warmth hugged me like an old memory. John drove without saying much, though I caught him glancing over, worry carved deep into his face. It had been ages since anyone looked at me like that. As the city lights streaked by, I leaned back and shut my eyes. Robert's harsh words, Lisa's cold silence, the crash of that vase, they all echoed in my head. But now, for the first time in weeks, I heard something else, my name, spoken softly, pulling me back to who I used to be. John's home was an old brownstone on a peaceful Upper West Side street. When we got there, the snow was still drifting down, and as he opened the door, a wave of warm air greeted me, smelling of spiced tea and a crackling fire. The place felt cozy and lived in, like it had seen its share of laughter and tears. I stood at the doorway, my coat soaked, my shoes icy, my heart hollow. John just touched my arm lightly and led me inside without a word. Hannah Adams was in the parlor, tucked into a big chair with a book in her lap. Time had etched soft lines around her eyes, but they still sparkled with warmth and smarts. I hadn't seen her in years, not since we were young moms in Clearview, swapping recipes and chatting over backyard fences. She'd aged well, life treating her kindly. The second she saw me, she stood and crossed the room in a heartbeat. Anna, she said, her voice quivering with feeling. What on earth happened to you? I didn't know where to start. Words failed me. But when she wrapped me in a hug, I let myself sink into it, just for a moment. That simple warmth almost broke me. They didn't push me to talk that first night. John showed me to the guest room, and Hannah brought me a tray of steaming soup and fresh bread, chatting lightly about her grandkids, the city's hustle, her cats, small, safe things. When I finally slipped under a pile of warm blankets, I didn't feel like a shadow or a burden for the first time in forever. I just felt safe. Morning came, and with it, the shame crept back as the snow started to melt outside. Over coffee in their kitchen, I tried to piece together the story: Lisa, the broken vase, the curb, the cab that never showed. I didn't cry, I think I was too drained for tears, but my voice wobbled when I talked about being treated like something you throw away. I laid it all bare, and they listened with that quiet anger good people have when someone they care about gets hurt. Hannah, who'd once been just a neighbor, had grown into something stronger. She now ran a nonprofit helping older women and widows, the ones the world often overlooks, like Lisa overlooked me. With a calm but firm tone, she told me I could stay as long as I needed, but she also said I wasn't finished yet. There's still fire in you, she said. I can tell. It was Hannah who helped me land the cooking job, not anything fancy, just a gig at a little cafe near Midtown. I'd always been at home in the kitchen, better than most, if I'm honest. Back in Clearview, I was the one folks called for a pie for a church event or a pot of stew for a funeral. I'd learned to make something out of nothing, always with love. In that small cafe, I started to find myself again, not as a grandma or someone's problem, but as a woman whose hands could still turn simple ingredients into comfort and happiness. Weeks went by. I'd get up before dawn, tie on my apron, and work until my body ached. I wasn't young anymore, but I moved with purpose, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I mattered, not the way Lisa and Robert made me feel, but truly, deeply valuable. People came back for my dishes, asked for me by name, smiled when I handed them their plates. I knew my place in the world wasn't grand, but in that little cafe, I was someone who made a difference. Lisa never reached out, not a single call, no note, no hint of worry. Eventually, it sank in that she'd erased me from her life, like I was just a chapter she was glad to close. In her mind, I guess I was a problem she'd finally cut out. 5 months after settling in with John and Hannah, I'd tucked away every penny I earned from the cafe. I had my little pension, the emergency savings Henry and I had pinched together over years of scraping by. Then there was John. One afternoon, he came to me with a quiet offer. He wanted to back me, not with contracts or strings, just one friend believing in another. He hadn't forgotten how I once fed a whole church crowd with just 2 chickens and a sack of rice. "You don't just cook, Anna," he said. "You bring people comfort." That's how Anna's table started. No big ribbon cutting, no fuss, just a little Harlem storefront with mismatched furniture, a hand-painted sign, and me in the kitchen, heart racing, pouring soup into a chipped bowl for my first customer. It took off faster than I could have dreamed. Word spread, not through ads, but through people talking. Customers came back, brought their friends. I served simple, heartfelt food, rich stews, fragrant roasts, flaky pies. I didn't bother with trendy stuff. I cooked what I knew, and it turned out that's what folks were craving. My hands hadn't forgotten a single recipe, not one pinch of spice. I even brought back a lamb dish I'd made for Lisa and Robert years ago, back when she still visited for holidays. Funny how a meal that once tied us together now helped me carve out my own name in the city. By early 2024, a year later, Anna's table wasn't just a small cafe anymore. We'd grown into a proper restaurant with 8 staff and crowds spilling onto the sidewalk every Friday night. John parked himself in the same corner booth every Thursday, sipping tea I brewed just for him, flipping through the newspaper. Hannah turned my story into a quiet beacon of hope for the women her nonprofit served, organizing events that shared our journey. I wore my apron like it was my strength, not to hide behind, but to remind myself who I'd become. People knew me, not as someone's mom or someone's burden, but as the woman who'd built something real from the ruins of what I'd lost. I stopped checking my phone for Lisa's name. That ache had softened into something I could live with, like an old scar that twinges before a storm but doesn't break open anymore. Still, when I'd peek out from the kitchen and see families at my tables, mothers joking with their daughters, a pang would hit me hard. It'd fade fast, but it never fully left. Some losses stay with you, no matter how far you've come. It was a regular Tuesday in March 2024 when I wandered into Saks Fifth Avenue. The city had shaken off winter, and soft spring light poured through the tall windows, dancing across shiny floors and fancy displays. I didn't have a plan to buy anything, I just wanted to do something nice for myself, something I still had to nudge myself to feel okay about. Even now, after everything, there were moments when I felt like that woman on the snowy curb, unseen and tossed aside. But I'd learned to hush that voice. I belonged here, maybe more than most. The air smelled faintly of rich leather and sharp perfume as I drifted through the store. I wore a simple cashmere coat and a silk scarf, nothing flashy, but nothing to overlook either. My shoes tapped lightly on the marble floor. I wasn't here to show off, but I wasn't here to blend in. As I passed a display of handbags, a young intern with big eyes and neatly tied hair came up, offering a warm smile. "Can I help you find anything, ma'am?" I was about to answer when a voice, sharp, unmistakable, cut through the air like a blade. "No way, is that really you?" I turned, slow and steady. There stood Laura Clark, Robert's younger sister. She looked almost exactly like she did that awful night years ago, when I stood shaking in Lisa's hallway, unwanted and ashamed. Her smile was cold, not touching her eyes. Before I could say a word, a young sales intern, maybe 19, with gentle eyes and fidgety hands, came over. "Ma'am," she said, polite but nervous, "can I assist you with anything?" She led me toward the coat section, glancing back now and then, like she was afraid she'd get in trouble for helping me. I stayed quiet, letting her do her job. Laura trailed behind us, her heels clicking on the marble like the ticks of a cruel clock. She kept her distance, close enough to be heard but far enough to act uninvolved. At first, she didn't say anything, but I knew she wouldn't stay quiet. "Be careful what you show her," she called out, loud enough for me to hear, pretending to talk to the intern. "She's not here to buy." "More like window shopping." The intern stiffened, but I acted like I didn't notice. She used to stay with my brother and his wife, Laura went on, now speaking to another employee who'd stepped nearby. You know, that big house on Riverside. She weaseled her way in after her husband passed, like some pitiful shadow. No job, no money, just hung around acting like she still had a place. Her voice dripped with fake brightness, cutting and dramatic. Poor Lisa, she sighed, loud enough for anyone close to hear. She took her in out of kindness. And how does she thank her? Smashes a priceless heirloom vase and gets herself thrown out. Clumsy and ungrateful, that's her. My fingers tightened around the scarf I was holding, but I kept my mouth shut. She's got a knack for latching onto folks with money, Laura added, lowering her voice just enough to sound conspiratorial, talking to another passing staff member. Plays the sweet old lady card. You'd never suspect, would you? But she's a leech. A total manipulator. Can cry on command. I could hear whispers behind me, the staff watching now. Some looked uneasy, shifting their weight, a few averted their eyes. One tried to slip away. I mean, just look at her, Laura pressed on, her voice dripping with scorn. Probably scrimped for months to afford a keychain, and now she's eyeing blouses and purses like she's somebody. She's nobody. A charity case who got a lucky break. Her laugh came then, quiet but cutting, meant to sting. She even tried to play family once. Can you believe it, family? God, I still cringe thinking about that Thanksgiving. She just showed up, uninvited, no heads up, in this awful brown coat that reeked of dust and bus fumes. Plopped herself at our table like she had a right to be there. It was mortifying. Her words kept spilling out, unchecked, and no one stepped in to stop her. Now she's here, acting like she's got money, Laura sneered. Probably using someone else's credit card or planning some return scam. This is Saks, not a soup kitchen. Then I noticed the manager crossing the floor. Tall, sharply dressed, with keen eyes, he moved with purpose, his jaw set tight. Someone must have called him, fed up with the scene. Laura didn't see him coming. She belongs back where she crawled out from, she said. Ohio or some nowhere place where people like her can still pretend they matter. The manager's voice cut through, steady but firm. Miss Clark. Laura spun around, caught off guard. Oh, Mr. Richardson, I was just, he glanced from her to me, then to the intern, who'd gone pale and still. Is there an issue here? He asked. She's not a real customer, Laura jumped in. I'm just worried about, theft or damage. I know her. She's taken advantage of my family. A heavy pause hung in the air as Mr. Richardson studied me, his gaze lingering. I saw it, the brief shadow of uncertainty in his eyes. Laura's words had hit their mark, at least a little. His face tightened, still professional but now cautious. The intern, silent until now, started ringing up my items, a tailored coat, a leather handbag, and a silk blouse, no discounts, no fuss. The register chimed. Approved. The screen confirmed it, and just like that, the doubt vanished. I lifted the sleek black shopping bag and met Mr. Richardson's eyes calmly. I won't be back, I said softly. He turned to Laura, his voice sharp. Miss Clark, you're done. You're fired, effective immediately. Her jaw dropped. You're joking. You've harassed a customer, insulted her, and humiliated her in front of staff and shoppers. That's unacceptable. You're finished here. I'm telling you, she's a fraud. Laura sputtered, her cool facade crumbling. That card's probably stolen. Who knows how she got it? Security, the manager called, already signaling them. Escort her out. 2 guards stepped forward. Laura stumbled back, her eyes wild. You're all buying her act. She's a liar. That's her game, she shrieked, trying to dodge them. Check that card. She's got nothing. The guards took her arms. She's just a pathetic leech. Enough, Mr. Richardson snapped. Get her out. Now. Laura's screams turned to wordless rage, slurs, curses, raw fury flying everywhere. Her voice bounced down the hall as the guards hauled her out, growing fainter until the glass doors shut behind her. Quiet settled in. Staff went back to their tasks. Shoppers looked away. Mr. Richardson let out a tired breath and faced me. "Miss Hawthorne, I'm so sorry," he said. I let her words sway me, even for a moment. "That's unforgivable." I gave a small nod, saying nothing. "I'd like to make this right. We'd be honored to have you as a SACS member." "Let me set that up." "I'll join," I said, "but I'll only shop with her." I nodded at the intern. Her eyes widened. "Me?" she asked, stunned. "Yes," I said, handing her my card with a faint, tired smile. "You were the only one who treated me like a person." A few days later, I heard Jessica, soft-spoken, steady, and kind, had been promoted to a full-time role, taking Laura's place. I pictured her at that counter, standing taller, her voice surer, no longer afraid to speak up. That image stayed with me as I walked home, my shopping bag tucked under my arm. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It just leaves the room, chin up. The morning I saw the auction notice, I was stirring oatmeal in the restaurant kitchen, the warm smell of cinnamon and brown butter filling the air. A creased copy of the Real Estate Observer sat on the counter, left by John the night before. My eyes snagged on a listing, one address in bold, impossible to miss, 31 West Riverstone Drive. I stopped stirring. That was their house. Lisa's house. The Clark residence. I set the spoon down, my heart not pounding, not breaking, just quiet. The listing was short and cold, 5-bedroom colonial, riverfront, luxury features, recently foreclosed. Auction date, Tuesday, 10 a.m. It felt like an ending, final and breathless. I didn't dig for details. I didn't call anyone. I didn't need to. Deep down, I'd sensed this was coming. There'd been whispers over the past year, talk of shady deals, lawsuits piling up behind their perfect front. Robert always played fast and loose with power. Men like him think money shields them forever. I went to the auction, not to bid or even to watch, not really. I just stood at the back of the crowd, wrapped in my navy wool coat, fading into the background. The auction house was plain, squeezed between a liquor store and an empty showroom. Inside, agents and investors sat rigid in their suits, murmuring quietly, glancing at the catalogs on their knees. The bidding was quick and ruthless. When the gavel dropped, the Clark house belonged to someone new, a stranger to them. I buttoned my coat high, ready to slip away into the chilly, gray morning. But as I stepped outside, a voice, sharp and all too familiar, stopped me. "You've got to be kidding." I turned slowly. There was Lisa, in a beige coat that looked worn and rumpled. Her hair was pulled back too tight, like she was trying to hold something inside from falling apart. Robert stood next to her, jaw locked, scarf slung carelessly around his neck. His eyes were red, burning with something close to fury. "What are you doing here?" Robert snapped before I could say a word. "This is none of your business." "I didn't realize losing your house to bad deals was a private affair," I said quietly, my eyes on the ground. Lisa let out a harsh, fake laugh. "Oh, come on, don't pretend you just stumbled in." "What, you here to mop the floors after the auction? That your new gig?" I looked at her, that face I knew so well, now so different. Her sneer was sharp, but her eyes betrayed her, fear, shame, a bitter humiliation she couldn't choke down. "What's that smirk for?" she hissed. "You think this makes you better than us? It's sad, honestly. You're slinging soup for laborers in some dive and acting like you're somebody." Robert jumped in, his voice like a blade. "We never should have let you in our home. You were a parasite from the start, always lurking, waiting for scraps. You were never family, just a stray we took in." I didn't wince. I didn't answer. Their words hung there, heavy with their own desperation, like a bad smell. They wanted me to snap, to shrink, to feel small again. But they couldn't reach me anymore. Lisa stepped closer, her voice lower now, dripping with poison. You know what I regret most? Not shipping you back to that sad little town the moment you showed up. I was so naive to give you a chance. You're a disgrace. For a second, I thought tears might come, but her eyes stayed dry. She just stood there, lips trembling, glancing around like she needed someone to back her up, but no one was there. I shifted my bag on my shoulder and stepped past her toward the street. Her voice cracked as she shouted after me. What are you even doing around here? Digging through dumpsters for your next home? I paused, just for a moment. I was looking for the right place to say goodbye, I said, not looking back, and kept walking. Behind me, Lisa's voice rose again, frantic now. I couldn't tell if she was yelling at me, Robert, or the world, but her words didn't land. They fell away like dry leaves in the wind. I pulled my coat tighter as I rounded the corner, not from the cold, but to feel my own strength, my own presence. The noise faded fast. I didn't turn around. 2 days later, with the new deed in my hand, I went back to West Riverstone Drive. It was late morning, crisp and clear, the kind of day where every sound carries and nothing can hide. I stepped out of the car, gravel crunching under my shoes as I walked toward the house I was once told wasn't mine. Lisa and Robert were already there, standing in the driveway, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. They must have come early, probably to see if the mystery buyer was poking through what was left of their pride. A moving truck idled nearby, half-loaded. Boxes were piled messily by the front door, some sealed, some ripped open. A broken lamp lay in the grass, like a symbol of their haste. Lisa spoke first, her voice tight and piercing. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I walked up the drive, chin up, eyes steady. Her sneer deepened. What, you left a penny under the floorboards that night we kicked you out? Still scavenging? I looked at them both, their stiff postures, their pride hanging by a thread. For a moment, I saw who they used to be, polished, untouchable, looking at me like I was dirt. They'd thought they were unstoppable. I cleared my throat. I'm here to check if you've cleared your stuff out of my house. The world went quiet, just the faint hum of the truck's engine and the breeze rustling the hedges. Lisa's mouth opened slightly. Robert blinked, his face a mix of confusion and anger. What did you just say? He growled, stepping closer. I repeated, my voice stronger, this is my house now. I bought it. That's ridiculous, Lisa said, shaking her head. You couldn't afford it. You don't have that kind of money. I did, I said plainly. And I do. I bid through someone else. Hannah helped. You remember Hannah, don't you? Robert's face contorted, the color draining from it. Lisa stood like a statue. You're making this up, she said, her voice unsteady. You don't know how this works. You can't just stroll in and take the deeds in my name, I interrupted. I'm not here to debate. I'm here to tell you you've got 2 days. After that, if your things are still here, I'll have them hauled away. Robert's jaw dropped, but no words followed. Lisa stumbled backward, her heel nearly tripping over the walkway's edge. I spun around and headed for the car, not glancing back. There was no need. That evening, word traveled fast. As I passed tables in the restaurant, a few diners murmured under their breath. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I slipped back to the kitchen, where my stove, my simmering sauces, and my steady rhythm waited. Justice doesn't always come with a gavel's bang in a courtroom. Sometimes, it's just a woman taking back the space she'd been pushed out of for far too long. A week later, the moving truck had vanished. The house on Riverstone stood silent, bare, and hollowed out. But the trouble wasn't over, not by a long shot. Months back, during the mess of my eviction, I'd been tricked into signing papers I couldn't make sense of. Lisa had slid them across the table, her smile warm, her words breezy. Just standard stuff, Mom, she'd said. Nothing big, just some old insurance forms. I didn't push back. She was my daughter, after all. But those signatures handed over what was left of my trust fund, the modest savings Henry and I had tucked away for our later years, straight to her. With John's support and Hannah's sharp legal team, we dug up the truth, forged names, sneaky paperwork, and a quiet theft hidden behind a mask of daughterly care. So, I filed charges. The story rippled through local news. Elderly mother sues prominent couple for fraud. A grainy photo of Lisa, her face pale and drawn, flashed online, snapped outside the courthouse. Robert? He was nowhere to be seen. Word was he'd holed up in a motel near Harlem, muttering about financial restructuring. When her deposition rolled around in early 2025, Lisa couldn't hold it together. Her facade cracked. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she dropped to her knees in the courthouse hallway, clutching my hands, sobbing. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was foolish. I was terrified. Please don't go through with this. I've got nothing left. She said it like it was some grand revelation. For a fleeting moment, I looked at her and saw my little girl, knee-skinned, eyes big, guilty over some childish mistake. But the memory dissolved. Some betrayals cut too deep to brush aside. You didn't just lose it all, I said softly. You tossed it away with both hands. She pleaded, but I stood up and walked away. The lawsuit pressed on. I wasn't after her in a jail cell or screaming headlines. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted her to face what she'd done, to feel the weight of it, and for it to be over. Then I went back to the life I'd carved out, the only one that truly mattered. Hannah and I grew the restaurant. We started a community kitchen on weekends, serving affordable meals to seniors and offering free cooking classes for single moms. Once a month, we loaded up hot meals and delivered them to shelters across town. Folks started calling me a philanthropist, but I didn't buy it. I just knew what it was like to feel unseen. John, steady as ever, still claimed his corner booth every Thursday, sipping the tea I brewed just for him while flipping through his newspaper. Jessica took charge of our retail line, aprons and spice blends with Anna's table stitched in delicate thread. Every time I watched her speak with that quiet confidence, I thought back to that day in Saks and how a small act of kindness can shift everything. Sometimes, I still strolled past West Riverstone. I never lingered. The house was always dark. Rumor had it the new owners gutted the place, wiping away every trace of its past. It didn't matter to me. That house was never truly mine. But this life, my kitchen, this warmth, this hard-earned peace, I'd built it from the ground up with my own 2 hands, and I wasn't finished yet. What do y'all think about this story? Was I too tough on Lisa, or did I do what needed doing? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story hit home for you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might be feeling stuck or powerless right now. It could mean more than you know.